Here are 10 easy tricks for beginner to intermediate skaters. A quick note, a few of these are based on the tricks in my first two 10 easy beginner trick videos, so if you haven't watched those yet, you should probably go do that first. There will be a card with a link to those, or you can look in the description. Trick number 1 is the tail drop. This trick is sort of like ollieing off an object, except you start with your tail resting on the edge of the ledge, and you give the board a little hop and push forward off the edge. This is a great trick to practice on curbs because they're pretty much the lowest thing you can do them off of, and on a curb they're extremely low risk. All you really have to do is put your board into the tail drop position with your tail on the curb, then you set your feet up like you're going to do an ollie, you dip your nose down ever so slightly, and you give the board a tiny little ollie motion, making sure that you jump forward to get your tail off of the curb. The good thing about this trick is you can start low on curbs and work your way up to any size object. It's also good because you don't need to snap your tail all the way to the ground like an ollie. It only takes about a quarter of the effort. And you can also do this onto soft ground at first so you don't get hurt while learning. The main thing to note is that when you dip your nose down, you want to make sure you don't dip it too far or the board might slip out or do something weird and you might get hurt. So just keep it nice and simple, practice on a curb first, and work your way up from there, building up your confidence. Trick number 2 is the Fakie frontside 360. This trick is pretty self-explanatory, and I'm assuming the fact that you've already watched the Easy Beginner Tricks Part 1 and you've learned how to Fakie frontside 180. This trick is the next logical step up, and in my opinion, it's just as easy. All you're really doing is a Fakie frontside 180 and then pivoting on your front truck. Once again, if you're riding Fakie and you do a rotation, the momentum is going to be in your favor and it'll actually be easier to spin. Pretty much all you need to practice is pivoting on your back truck and then pivoting on your front truck. Do this a few times until you're really comfortable, and then you can start to work in the pop. From there, you can practice doing a Fakie frontside 180 and then adding in a pivot on your nose. And then when you're really comfortable with that, you can put them all together into a full Fakie frontside 360. Now, if you have really good pop, yes, you can do this trick completely in the air, but if you're like me, you'll get a Fakie frontside 180 or 270 and then pivot the rest of the trick on the front truck. The momentum is really what carries you through this trick, so as long as you wind up your shoulders and then unwind them really fast while giving it the frontside 180 motion, you can pretty much focus on your front foot, making sure you land on that truck and pivot the rest of the 360. Trick number 3 is the 180 boneless. This is another trick that's based on one of the earlier easy tricks. So if you've learned how to boneless, then the next logical step is to do the 180 boneless. Some people may actually find this easier because of the motion in a boneless kind of brings the board up and in front of you, so it may actually feel like it makes more sense to bring the board up and around and just continue through with a 180. Pretty much, if you can do a boneless and if you can jump off the ground and do a 180, then all you have to do is put them together. The only other thing you might need to be comfortable with is riding switch, because when you roll away, that's the direction you're going to be facing. But when you put all the steps together, it's actually really easy. One thing I want to point out that I notice a lot of people have trouble with when they're learning bonelesses is that you don't really want to stop, put your foot down, and then grab the board and jump. It's more like you want to grab the board and then put your foot down, or you want to grab the board and put your foot down at the same time. This will lead to a lot smoother of a motion, which will make the trick look a lot better in the end. Also, if you're finding that this trick is too easy, you may just want to go for broke and try a full 360. Next up, we have the board stall. This is another trick that's great because you can start really small on a curb or on a parking block and then take it up from there. Once again, this trick is pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to come up onto the object and land the center of your board onto it, and then you're going to pull off, and I like to turn front side off of the object, but this all depends on if the object has a flat surface on top, like a ledge or a sidewalk, or if you're hanging over it like a rail or a parking block. The good thing is you don't have to be able to ollie as high as the object, you just need to be able to get the middle of your deck onto it, and then you can press your feet forward in order to level it out. And of course, if you're practicing this on a curb, you don't even really have to ollie. Your main focus should be on coming out of the trick, which to me kind of just feels like a frontside kick turn, or even almost a frontside 180, but it's really just pushing down on the tail and turning your body frontside. On a higher object like this, you can see how my back wheels actually kind of push the board off of the bench, and all I'm really doing is pushing down on the tail and turning frontside. Trick number 5 is the 180 hippie jump. Yet again, this trick is based on one of the earlier easy tricks, and I would say that this one isn't so much about skill, because really all you're doing is jumping. It's more of a confidence builder. It can be scary enough jumping off your board, letting it pass under an object and then landing back on your board, but try adding a 180 body varial into that and it really steps things up. Make sure that you have your hippie jumps down really well, and this is stupid, but make sure you can jump and do a 180 on the ground too. Then you can practice jumping and doing the body varial just on your board, and doing it on your board while riding. And then finally you can step it up and try and take it actually doing a hippie jump over an object. You're going to want to make sure that you're really comfortable riding switch, because that's how you're going to end up landing, and you don't want to land wrong and get wheel bite or land too far on the nose and fall off. For trick number 6, we have the nose pick. This is another stall that you can do on a curb, which involves landing on your front truck in the nose grind position, but then grabbing the board with your hand and yanking it off. This one can be hard if you've never done anything in the nose down position, especially ollieing into that position. So you can practice this at first by doing it on the flat ground. You're going to want to pop and slightly turn your board about 90 degrees and land with your nose just flat on the ground. Do this a few times to get the feeling of transitioning your weight to the nose of your board. And once you're comfortable with that, you can add in the second step, which is simultaneously pulling up with your arm and lifting up your feet so the board can come up and turn. After that, you can also practice by putting your board in position on a curb or ledge or whatever you're going to do this trick on, and pulling it off from there. And once you're comfortable with all these steps, you put them all together into the nose pick. At number 7, we have the Flamingo. This is a pretty weird trick, especially if you're just trying it on flat ground like I am here. Usually you would see this trick on transition, but that definitely doesn't mean you can't learn it on flat ground. This is a really weird looking trick where the board comes up and wraps around your front calf and your back leg holds it in place. And then from there you kind of shimmy out of it and jump back onto the board. Now you might think that this one's really hard to do from the looks of it, but with the proper foot positioning and an understanding of how to scoop the tail, it's actually not too bad. You want to make sure that your back foot is in that toe side pocket and that your front foot is in a good position where it can just come off the side of the board. From here, you want to scoop the tail down with your back foot and really dig in with your toes to wrap it around the back of your front calf. The main thing here is you don't want the board to leave your back foot at any time. You want to keep it so that your back foot will hug it up against the back of your calf and keep it pinched between your foot and your leg. You can practice getting into this stall just by doing the first half of it, and you can practice this over and over until you really get the motion and you get the board locked in there between your foot and leg. Coming out of this trick is actually surprisingly easy. You don't really have to focus on doing anything in particular other than swinging the board the opposite way that it came, and then jumping up back off your front foot and landing back on the board. I know that this one is a bit tough, but for those of you who understand the scoop of an impossible or a pressure flip, this one's actually really not too bad. For trick number 8, we have the Nollie frontside 360 shuvit. Once again, watch my very first easy beginner tricks video to learn Nollie frontside shuvits, and then you can take it up a notch by trying this trick. So make sure that you really learned the precursor of a Nollie frontside shuvit, because this trick really is just the same exact thing, except you're putting a little bit more power into the scoop and you're jumping for a little bit longer. The 3 things about this trick that you have to remember are that 1, it's easy to flip the board over when it's spinning so fast, so you're going to want to keep your front foot in a good position. Don't put it too far onto the nose or that's going to make it flip over. Number 2 is that you're actually going to have to jump for a little longer than you would for the regular Nollie frontside shuvit. For the regular one, you barely even have to hop up, but for this one, you're actually going to have to linger for about a half a second more before you can put your feet down. And lastly, for this one, your back foot can actually help guide it for the first fraction of a second by kicking your back foot forward in front of you when you start the rotation. This also helps it from immediately flipping over in the first second of it. This is a good trick to practice while landing with one foot a few times. And then once you're comfortable with that, you can just go for it and try the full 360. Trick number 9 is the Fastplant. This trick is sort of the Boneless's bigger brother. Instead of grabbing the board and then jumping up, you actually have to ollie first and then grab the board. So yes, this trick is predicated upon the fact that you know how to ollie, but really you don't even have to land those ollies because your back foot comes directly off. So as long as you can pop your board and push your front foot forward in order to make the board come up, then all you have to do is grab it with your back hand. So the way that this works is you pop like you're going to do an ollie, but then your back foot goes straight to the ground. While that's happening, your front foot is sliding up the nose like normal, and as your tail comes up because of that, you grab it with your back hand, and then you jump off your back foot and land back onto the board. You put these all together into one fluid motion, and then you have the Fastplant. This is another one that may seem hard, but if you break it down into its components and practice each one, then you should be able to put them together into one smooth trick. I would suggest first practice ollieing and getting into that Fastplant position. So pop off the ground, let the board come up and grab it and stop there. And then after that, I would practice starting from that position and jumping onto your board. And lastly, we have the early grab finger flip. Yet another trick that involves grabbing your board. This one's cool because you get the feeling of doing a kickflip and getting off the ground, except you don't actually have to pop the tail or flick your front foot. You basically just squat down, grab the nose with your hand, and then lift up, jump, and flip the board. The thing about this trick is that it's not particularly hard. The hard part is getting the timing correct. You don't want to pull up on the nose too soon or before you hop, because then you'll end up just not doing anything. And you also want to make sure that you let the board fully rotate underneath you once you do flip it. Two things to practice are: one, get used to putting your hand in this position with your thumb above the board and your fingers below it on the side of the nose, and then just practice flipping the board. Once you're comfortable with that, you need to get situated with your foot positioning. For this trick, the closer your feet are together towards the tail, the easier it is. You're not actually popping off your tail like for an ollie or a kickflip, but once your front hand pulls up on the nose of the board, you do have to be able to let the tail go down and then jump off your feet. From there, you fling the board around really quickly and land back on it. The board may have a tendency to turn frontside when you do this just because of the way that you're grabbing it, so keep that in mind and try and correct for it. So these were 10 easy to intermediate to slightly hard tricks. I tried to cover the spectrum by getting some of the easier ones where you don't really need to know tricks beforehand, to some of the harder ones where you do need to know some prerequisites. And I am really curious to hear what you think about this. I'm going to add a card that has a poll. Let me know if you'd like more easier tricks or more of these kind of intermediate to harder tricks, and I will try to make future videos accordingly. So just let me know if you need any help with any of these, and also tell me which one was your favorite. Make sure that you check out the Easy Beginner Tricks Part 1 and 2 because a lot of these were based on those. And besides that, keep growing your confidence, keep developing, and keep moving forward. But overall, keep having fun. So thank you for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.